So what we're going to do is we'll start with we'll start with homework. And I'll let you keep your quiz because we'll go over it as a part of the homework. The quiz picked up the verses 3 and 4, and with the homework we did 1 through 6. So any questions that you've got on 1 through 2, we'll answer now, and then I'll go methodically through the quiz.
In verse 1, where it says technia, now that comes from technon, which is a neuter second declension. So why is it IA?
So you're right. Technon is the word that we've learned, and that is neuter second declension. This word is from technion, which is neuter second declension. And this little iota in here is a diminutive, kind of like the difference between Frau and Fraulein in German, which would be a woman or a girl or a little girl. So these would be the difference between child and little children. And he's not actually talking to little children, obviously. He's using it as a term of endearment. That same term in a different context could be derogatory, but in this one he's expressing his love for them, my little children.
So therefore you add the A on that second one, and you have the little, and it's plural children.
Well, it's derived from here, and if we were to do the declension, it would be on, oo, o, on, and then the plural form would be a. So yeah. I thought that's what you meant, I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah. I was just, I couldn't figure out why the IA.
And I didn't mention it, but I think I flew really quickly through it last week, so.
Tis amarte, why is that not third person plural?
Hamarte.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is going to be from hamartano. And third person plural would be, do you know what mood this is?
I believe it's subjunctive,
Yes.
and it was either present, middle, or passive.
Okay, good. Martano, and this is going to be, do you know what tense? Let's look at, so look up here, we've got, it's from hamartano.
Yeah.
Hamarte is our word.
Yeah.
So when we parse, we did this for a while, and I think it sort of fell out because I just forgot to keep on drilling it. Do we see any major difference between the two?
Yeah, you're missing.
You dropped a row.
Well, that's not a row, it's a...
You got rid of the alpha, and you got rid of the.
yeah, sorry. Thank you. Yes, I did. I got rid of the, and let me get a different pen for this. We dropped the on in there and gone to straight K. So that seems like a pretty major shift in the root of the word, as we called it. And what tense does that happen in?
I don't remember.
The aorist, the second aorist? Remember our second aorists were really crazy because of the fact that it went through a major stem change.
Okay, because I still was thinking that Eris had to have the epsilon in front of it.
Right, outside of the indicative mood, and this happens to be the subjunctive, we lose that augment. If it were in the indicative, the alpha would turn into a eta. Now the reason why we have A here as third singular, so we got second aorist subjunctive, and it's active. Or is it?
Passive.
Someone sends my A tie, right? Let me check our. On page, just make sure.
It's just he was talking to the group, and he was using you all, and then he talks about if someone sins, and I would just wasn't sure why he didn't keep it in the same, what I was addressing. That's okay.
Why he didn't keep it in the plural?
Yeah.
Because he's simply singling out a specific type of individual.
Okay.
And that's why he's done that. So the tis is singular, and it goes with its verb, which is also singular.
Right. Okay.
And I think you've got that. The reason why we have the A ending there, though, is in the second aorist, it reverts to the essentially the present endings. And our present endings for your subjunctive were O, ace, A, omen, eta, and then if it were in the third plural, it would have been osin. And we get these endings because lengthening has taken place in the connecting vowel. I think I probably could have answered that question a lot quicker if I understood what you're asking. So I'm sorry. Let me see. Go ahead with the next if you have one.
All right, my rough of number 2, verse 2. And concerning our sin, he is able to forgive, but not only our, but it was like our what?
Right. John is forcing you to infer from previous contexts. And he's going to do that in verse 6 as well, which is why we've got a lot of words in our English translation that aren't in our Greek. And we'll get there. So if I were to translate, I'd say, and he is the propitiation concerning our sins, not concerning, and if you take a look at that construction in the first one, you see peri, martone, right? Is that homartone? Tone, hamartion. Humon, right?
Yes.
So that's the first part of it. And then the second one is Hamon. Are not your. The second part of it picks up just about the same. It's a parallel expression. Peri, and not tone, emet. I'm doing horrible this evening. So you see here what's happened. Not concerning the of our own. He's constructed the same sort of thing here
Okay.
and made you plug this in to that hole there. It's what we call an ellipsis, or we say that it has, a word has alighted. Greek is very fond of that. Not concerning our sins alone.
So, but not only our sins, but the sins of all the world? Is that
Mhm.
how you would translate that?
Yes.
Okay, do you have any questions on order two?
I think you took all my action.
Okay.
Same ones?
Yeah.
Good. Good. Okay, so number 3 then. Take a stab at translating.
And in this we know that we have known him if we keep his commandments.
Yeah, perfect. Some other things that you could have done there to bring out what he's getting at. This is what we call an interpretive translation. And by this, we know that we have come to know him if we are keeping his commandments. So what I've emphasized in that translation is the having come to know in the past and the present continuing keeping of his commandments.
Okay, what is the form of the eginosko command?
Egnokamen?
Yeah,
Okay, I will get right to that, but since we're doing the quiz, I'm going to start with the first one.
okay.
And you probably already know the answer, but Gnoskamen. Parse it for me. It's from?
Ginosko?
Good. Gnosko. It is what tense?
Present.
Present, right? So we see that there's no big change between these. Gno, gnosk, gnosk. And then our ending, gnosk. Man, I'm dying. Gnoskamen. Yep, so there's no big difference there, so it's present. It is what voice?
Active.
Active, good. And it is what mood?
Indicative.
Indicative. Good. You notice indicatives, we don't have gnoskomen, right? It's gnoskamen. Now it is what person and number?
Third floor.
Not third.
That's we.
We, first plural. Good. We haven't done this in a while, I know. Okay, so that's that. And then the next one is egnokamen. Egnokamen. And it's from Gnosko, good. And what do we see as difference between the two of these?
You have the epsilon and
Good,
it's almond, not omen.
good.
And you dropped an S.
I did.
It's gone to the root instead of the stem.
Right, so it's gone to a pretty major change. We have an epsilon to tell us something about it as well. And this may have thrown you for a loop, the kappa that's here, but in Gnosko in particular, the kappa appears in the aorist. So it's not a perfect, it's the aorist. If it were the perfect, we'd have to have reduplication, and we don't have that. So we have a major stem change, the presence of an alpha.
Sorry, I thought
Yes, it is the perfect, I'm sorry.
Imperfect?
It is the perfect.
The perfect.
The perfect.
Okay.
Yes, it is the perfect.
What?
Back up.
Sorry.
You're fine.
I thought epsilon meant either imperfect or aorist.
It does.
Okay.
And Gnosko is a exception to the rule. I believe it is the combination of the gamma. So this is from Gno, right? That's our root. And because of the gamma nu combination, reduplication isn't allowed to take place. So you drop the reduplicated gamma, and instead you just have the epsilon that persists. And the kappa tells us that it's the aorist. I mean the perfect. And sometimes the kappa and the sigma signify either an aorist or a perfect, and it gets a little bit jumbled up with certain words. So yeah, this is a perfect. It is a perfect, and I am so sorry about that. I keep on repeating, I'm not on my game this evening, and I'm not sure why. The perfect, what voice is it? Active, middle, or passive?
Active.
Active, it's still the min ending, right? Instead of a my ending. And it's what mood?
Indicative.
Indicative mood. And what person and number?
First one.
Good. So here's our person number ending, min. The alpha hasn't changed at all. So far as connecting vowel, we've got the kappa that tells us that it's perfect. And those are our signs. Good. Okay, and then the next verb for that verse.
All right,
we
I have a
had-
question on that word, though.
Yeah.
Why is the command in the feminine form versus the masculine?
If his commandments, tas intelos, because the word is from, we've learned this word, it just happens to be one of the words that is in John that we haven't learned. It's from intale, and it is a feminine noun.
Right.
So the question was, why is...
It's just, if you look it up in this book,
Mhm.
it's spelled a little bit different, and it's presented in the masculine form.
So you did look it up, and what I came up with up there may be wrong. This may be a masculine noun according to first declension. No. It's not in here. Yes it is. Intellect. Hey, intellect. It's commandment, and it is a feminine.
All right, I don't know where I was looking, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. Absolutely okay. So, if his commandments, the Altu is referring to Christ or God. Does that help?
Yep.
Okay. And then the next word there is our last verb in that verse, and it's te Roman. Te Roman. It is from
Tereo.
Good. And let's pick out the easy things first. Our person, number, suffix, min, tells us what person and number.
First plural.
First plural. Good. And what voice based upon that?
Active.
Active. So it's not my side tie. And what tense? Do we see any major differences? We do see the O here, the connecting vowel, but that's not so much a tense difference. It might be a voice mood difference. I mean a mood difference. So what tense would it be then?
Present.
Present. Present.
I had present active.
Active. And it's not an indicative. What other option might fit?
You have an omega instead of an omicron,
Mhm.
so it could be subjunctive or it could be the contraction.
Right. If it were a contraction, though, we have te reo, and we've got the present and the active. Those are things that we know. So if it were an indicative mood, we would have what ending? Amen, right? With the omicron. And when we have an omicron and an epsilon contract, we get what combination? Te, not Roman, but te Rumen. Which means that what's happened is a lengthening has taken place to the omega, and we get a subjunctive. And we could have shortcut that process to a degree by seeing that it's coupled with the eon. And that might flag us. Now, eon can be used with indicative verbs, but it can raise in our mind the question of whether or not it will be a subjunctive. And that might help us. Okay, take a stab at verse 4.
Okay, I had a question on the first two words.
Mm-hmm.
Where does the subject come from? Lego is a participle.
Yes.
On page 152, it says the one saying, so that's how I got it.
Remember our participles, and when I say remember, I'm not actually thinking you remember, it's just a way of bringing it back up. Our participles can function in 3 different ways. And they were attributive, just like our adjective, attributive adjective. Adverbial. So this would be something along the lines of though he said, while he said, after he said, because he said, something along those lines. And the last one is just like your adjective when it's used alone and not with another noun or not with anything else. It could be substantival. So it's treated as if it is a noun itself. So the saying one, or the one who says.
Okay. The one who says, I know him, and does not keep his commands, is a liar, and the truth is not in him.
Great. Another way to translate it could be the one who says, I have come to know him and is not keeping his commandments. He is a liar and the truth is not in him. It's good.
So what is that form of,
Egnokop.
yeah,
All right, let's do it again. Because
I mean, is that,
here we go. First off, we'll do Lego or Legone. And I know I'm delaying what you really want to get to, but this is for Susan as well. Legone is from
Lego?
Lego. Any major stem changes?
no,
No. So what tense?
Present.
Present. Good. What voice?
Active.
Active. And what mood?
Participle.
It's a participle, right? This new ending doesn't really occur with verbs or with finite verbs. It occurs with an infinitive as an ain, but not with the omega. So the own ending tips us off that it's a participle. So that tells us that we're not looking for person or number, but now we're looking for case, number, and gender. So our case is, and we can get all of this conveniently from the ha article. So if you just look at ha, give me case, number, and gender from that.
Nominative, singular, masculine.
Good. Nominative, singular, masculine. All right, and now to get to Egnoka. Egnoka. It's from?
or is it Gino?
Gnosko.
Is it because it's still got the K?
That is from Gnosco. Mm-hmm. Take a look at this word. And no common. That's the same one we just saw in the previous verse. It just looks like it's completely different because it's longer. But all that length is due to is our person number suffix, the min.
Yeah,
But once we cut that off, we have that word.
okay.
So now we've got agnoka. What did we say that the tense was for agnocommon?
Perfect.
Perfect. What did we say the voice was?
Active.
Active. And what did we say the mood was?
Indicative.
Indicative. And the person and number on this one is where it gets a little tricky. And you translated it right though, so
First singular.
first singular. Good. With our aorist and our perfect endings, we had on-s, in, amineta on, and that first on could sometimes be a blank. Could be nothing. So what we have there is no ending at all, and it's just the kappa alpha from the perfect. Or the alpha from the perfect.
How is that translated in English?
I have come to know, or I have known, or I know. I'll accept any of those. Because it's sort of a gnomic idea that it's either the I've known in the past or that I know him. It's part of my knowledge. Once you know something you don't, you can't forget it, but you could also say it's a state of idea. But that's getting into nuances of grammar that we don't really need to deal with here. All right, so agnoka. How about teron? Teron is from, we'll move quickly,
Tereo.
tereo. Any stem changes? No stem change. So it's a what? Present. What voice?
Active.
Active. What mood?
Participle.
Participle. And since it's a participle, again, we open up the possibility of case number and gender. And if we were doing this and we're really struggling, it's got that same ending that legon has. And with legon, we have the help of the article ha. So if we go on that, go on what we know, it is a
Nominative masculine singular.
good nominative masculine singular. Excellent. And lastly, we have Eston. Eston is from
Amy.
what verb?
Amy.
Amy. It is what, and this you're not going to be able to have any help from stem or anything like that. You just have to know the to be verbs. It is a
Third singular.
third singular tense,
Present.
present, voice,
Active.
active, mood.
Indicative.
Indicative. Good. So that was that. For your extra credit, I am the way, the truth, and the life. Hopefully you were able to at least get 2 of those words because they were in the translation exercise. So I is
Ego.
ego, am,
Amy.
Amy, good. The way,
Ahados.
no, very close. Hadas is right. Hey Hadas.
Ah.
This is one of your feminine nouns according to the second declension. Hey Hadas. The way, and then the truth is
Kai he aletheus.
good. Kai, hey, lethe, not us, lethe.
I have alpha, lambda, eta, theta, iota, alpha, sigma.
Alpha sigma. The sigma's got to drop. It's just the alpha. Alethea.
Ah.
Okay. Os is the either the genitive or the accusative plural. And then finally the life.
Kai he zoe.
Kai, he, zoe. Good.
Now, with our translation in verse 4, I thought that the Eston went with the truth. And so it was like, where is the him coming up in this verse? You know, and this truth is not within him. If I was translating this without knowing what this verse is, how would I?
Sure. All right, so last week we said that essentially from ha legon all the way down to teron, that serves as the subject,
Okay.
right? So the one who says that I have come to know him and does not keep his commandments, that describes the subject. He says this and he doesn't do. That person, pseustes, estin, that person is a liar. And then we have a new clause, kai in tuto, he aletheia uk estin. And in this one, or in this one, so it's referring to that individual. The tuto is referring back to the person who says, does not do, and is a liar. In that person, the truth is not in.
So I need to translate in this one instead of just this for tab 2.
Right. And a better way to translate that for you so that you can see it in the English is, and the truth is not in this one. Or better yet, and the truth is not in this person. And your English translations just make it even easier than all of that and say the truth is not in him. All right, and then 5, verse 5 and verse 6. Did you have any questions on 5?
I did, but
Okay.
go ahead. If she's got questions, she can go first.
Okay. Alethos is an adverb, correct?
Yes.
What verb does it modify then?
Okay. Let's see. And is being taken from de. We got a little bit of an ellipsis there. Or what's that called? I can't think of it. Contraction or elision, or there's a specific word for it, and I can't think of it right now. But yeah, either of those work. And whoever keeps his word, that's the first part of that clause, whoever keeps his word, the love of God is truly in this one.
And how do we get to that?
Or, just a second. In him truly the love is perfected. Huh. Oh, wait. No. My text, if you'd seen it, the verb was hanging onto the next line, and there was a big gap, so I thought that's where it was ended. The verb is teleotai. You see that there?
Yes.
Okay, so our verb is teleotai, and it's truly, in this one, the love of God has been perfected.
Okay.
Or you could do, in this one, the love of God has truly been perfected. Either of those work. If that helps you connect the adverb to the verb it's modifying.
Okay. So it's whatever keeps his word. And then it's truly,
Yep.
I've got truly in this, the love of God. And then I was not sure how to translate. I mean, I knew the root verb, but I didn't know how to translate it in English.
Yeah.
Make complete, yeah, will make complete. it's repeated, so I'm assuming it's past. I mean,
It's got the reduplication,
Yeah.
which means it's perfect, so we could say has.
has been made complete, or,
Aorist, passive, perfect, middle, and passive, they share the same forms, correct? I'm not crazy right now. Okay, perfect. Middle and passive share the same form. Yeah, this I would translate as a passive verb, and that's how we help it along. Has been perfected.
because we are in him? Is that,
Because we keep his word. The love of God has been perfected. Maybe this will help you in English if I restructure things. How about we put that second clause in verse 2 up at the head and get rid of the in tuto. Truly, the love of God has been perfected in whoever keeps his word. So I've inverted the clauses there. Because that first clause is dependent upon the second one. Truly, in this individual is all of that first clause. He is the one who keeps God's word. In that person, God's love has been perfected.
the hoti and auto esmon, because into him we are, that just wasn't making sense.
Oh, the next clause, yes. In this we know that we are in him, or by this we know we are in him. I think our confusion, or I think your specific confusion is coming with the word tuto. Am I wrong about that?
Yeah.
Tuto can, especially because of the fact that it is tuto. It's from hutas, meaning this. And as we go down the paradigm, we decline it just like our second declension verb, the nouns, or our first declension nouns if it were feminine. So hutas, to, nominative, genitive, to toe, dative, accusative, to ton, or is it just to ta for the nominative, for the ton, I think. But anyway, this is for your masculine. And when we get over to our neuter, we extrapolate out to our neuter, tuto stays the same. So now we can have this referring to masculine things or neuter things, and it can be referring to people or to objects or to abstract concepts. And I think that's where it's confusing, is we have to do a great deal of interpretive work or inferential work to get at what John is saying, because he uses that phrase in tuto in a variety of ways. Sometimes he uses it to point back in the context, sometimes he uses it to point forward in the context, and sometimes he uses it to refer to things, people, or to concepts. In this specific verse, he's using it in two ways. The first way, aletheos, or alethos in tuto, is referring to a person. That person is the one who keeps God's commandments. But the second way that it's being used is to describe everything that has come before. The continuity between God's love being perfected and us doing his commandments in all of that, in that concept, we know that we are in him, or that we are Christians, or that we believe, or that we are, one of his phrases is minnow. We are abiding in him. Did that help at all? You sure? I don't want to move on if it didn't. Because getting into tow for John is difficult. Okay, number 6 then, verse 6. The one who says, here's where things get really tricky. The one who says, and we have to infer bear with me. I'll let go. In alto, min ain. Correct me if I'm missing anything here. In min ain. Doing that largely from memory. In alto, min ain. Aphele. Now I need it. Kathos. Kanos. Very. Taysen. Alphos. Utos. Peri. Tame. This is clear as mud, isn't it? Alright. The one who says, we'll use this. This is what he says. He says, in alto minane. In him to remain. Now, we can supply one of two different words here. We can supply auton, the one who says he remains in him. Or we could say me is dropped out. They're both in the accusative. Our infinitive takes the accusative as its subject or its object. So something has dropped out here. To make sense of it, we need to add what is implied. The one who says, either he says he remains in him, or he says I remain in him.
So the infinitive is functioning as a clause by itself before the main verb instead of a to abide type
Yes.
thing?
Okay. Because here's where things get even more tricky in this clause. And you're not going to find too many, or in this sentence, and you're not going to find too many like this. We have an embedded clause within all of this. Kathos akanos peripatesin. Let's treat that like it's not even here. Notice how I've bracketed it off. If you bracket it off in your mind, then we can bring this portion of the clause up to here. The one who says, I remain in him, he ought, just as, and that is referring to up here. So let's bracket that out in our mind as well. He ought to walk. The one who says, I remain in him, he ought to walk. Now how should he walk? He should walk just as that one walked. Now if we translate it without doing all that mental bracketing, we can even make sense of it somewhat. The one who says he remains in him ought, just as that one walked, he also likewise should walk. Does that bracketing off help us to see it a little bit better? It would be like splitting, it's a majorly split infinitive. You've got the main verb of the clause, ophele, that's being segmented off, if you could see it in English, by commas, and then picking back up.
So the chi signifies a new clause. but
It's not signifying a new clause. It's being used in one of those special uses also. And the reason I didn't deal with it when I separated them, I didn't want to put brackets around it because it's a part of this. But it doesn't make sense apart from that. So follow with me one more time if I'm going through it as it's written. The one who says, this is what he says, I remain in him, ought, just as that one walked, also he ought likewise, like this, to walk. So it's not starting a new clause, it's referring back to the continuity and congruity of our walking in the same way that he is walking. It's a verse that will make you tear your hair out, but it's also a verse that's very fun to explain.
Okay. This is more basic.
Okay.
I'm not seeing endings to give me the clues. So when you've got Menide, I know it's like I can come up with the verb and it's meno,
Mm-hmm.
but then it's like I fall apart.
So we have minnow, just like you said, and you can reference your vocabulary and get there. When we segment out, we see ain, and I think that it's throwing you.
Yeah.
And I think most of the endings are throwing you, and that's to be expected at this point, because now we started off by going just through the indicative mood for an entire semester, so to speak. And now that we've continued to the other half of the grammar, we've added on top of that subjunctives, imperatives, and infinitives and participles.
So this is a present infinitive active.
Mm-hmm.
So you translate it as
To
be abiding.
to abide or to remain. But there were also those other uses of the infinitive. And one of the ones that took me a very, very long time to have mentally click was this use right here, where the infinitive can take an accusative subject or an accusative object. It's almost as if it functions as a verb itself, like a regular verb. And it leads you to ask the question, why didn't you just write this? In him, ego, minno. but language has its own functionality, and we use multiple ways to get a similar meaning. And that's how he's chosen to do it. And not only has he chosen to use that construction, he decided to use only part of the construction by leaving out the object or the subject of the infinitive.
And the perietatesin,
Peripatesin?
yeah.
Peripatesin.
What is the root word for that?
It's peripateo.
Okay.
Peripateo. And what has happened here is we've got a compound with peri in front. So our augment doesn't go to the front of the compound, it goes in the middle. So it's peri-e, and that is our augment. And then we have pot, and it's a contract verb. So when you add the sigma and a contract verb, sometimes the vowel lengthens to an eta, and that's where we get that eta from. And the N is just your on-S in ending of your aorist. Peripatesin. And our sigma, what we have here is our sigma alpha, epsilon sigma from the aorist. And we just have a lengthening because it's a contract verb.
So it's I know this isn't the right term, but it's almost like a compound word in English, like erkomai.
Mm-hmm.
I come out of, so you throw the augment in the middle.
Mm-hmm. It's just confusing us because we have a vowel ending there and another vowel right next to it. In a lot of the instances, especially with apabino, for instance, it would, or if it with an epsilon in there or an alpha or an omicron in there, I think that it lengthens instead of having a second vowel in there. Yeah. Like parakuo becomes pare, for instance. Any other ones on 6? Feel free, really. This is what you're here to do.
The peripatetin
Mm-hmm.
is because it's got the EIN, that makes it an infinitive?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. So peripateo is contract again. The ain ending is normal, and we have one of them drop out because epsilon combined with epsilon iota is a. Yeah, and it is an infinitive, present active infinitive.
All right, now, the reason I was confused is, this is listed as, in Zoteides, maybe he made a mistake, but it's listed as an aorist indicative active.
You sure that's not peripatesin? That's where it is. So to walk, the to walk, that's the one that you're looking for. And that's confusing because of the way that he's ordered the clause versus the way that the English is ordered. The Greek text is ordered.
Because it was like, this is an aorist.
What might help you more is after they're finished, probably which is after our class is finished, there's another tool in there that's an analytical lexicon. And it has the Greek text as is here, and then it tells you each one of the parsings in reference to the text as opposed to having to go back and flip and look it up. And if they don't have one in there, I can lend you mine, or just outright give it to you because I don't use it. It was given to me to pass on. Unless you have more questions on 1 through 6, we'll take a break and then we'll come back for chapter 25. All right, we'll start with the conjugation of me verbs. And the most common me verb that you've already found is a-me. But a-me isn't going to help you quite as much with what we're talking about. Because a-me is irregular, and what we'll be dealing with are semi-regular me verbs. Your three most common me verbs in the New Testament are didomi, to give, tithemi, to put, and histemi is to stand. What do you notice right off the bat about these three verbs?
They have long connecting vowels.
They do. That's a good observation, certainly.
They all end in,
Me.
Yeah.
And then the only other thing that hasn't been talked about it's not occurring to you because you're learning it as a vocabulary verb and word in the present. But if you were to see these verbs out in the wild, for instance, without knowing that this was the lexical form, what would you think about it?
Reduplication.
Right, good. So we see reduplication in each one of these. We sort of don't see it in that one because we're not trained to see it, but it is. This is from systemi, but because they didn't like it, the sigma falls away and it becomes a rough breathing mark. So the sigma is incorporated into the rough breathing mark. But this is something you need to drill into your mind immediately, which is that your present tense has present reduplication. Do not think this is a perfect. Your root is do, or da, rather, the, and sta. If you remember those, the two of these sets right here, you'll be well on your way. Because knowing this helps us with the lexical form, it tells us how to memorize the vocabulary, it tells us that it's in the present tense. But knowing this, da, the, and sta, which are the roots, will help us to form the rest of the verb tenses and moods. Once you get that down, I think that that's probably 50% of the battle, because though the endings aren't the same as your O-class verbs, like luo, which is what we've been using, the endings are still very similar, and you'll be able to point them out and recognize them. So if we turn the page, we see there the present active indicative of those verbs. He lists the full conjugations for each verb. Ditto me. The me shouldn't throw us too badly because a me is the first singular. Didos. So when we were doing our present active indicative, what were our endings? O, ace, a, amen, eta, usen. So here we have didomi, didos, didosin. Now this one might throw you because you might think that it is third person plural. Look at your third person plural. It's didasin, and that's what separates the two of them.
So the omega and alpha, they don't contract at all?
Not in this instance.
Okay.
A rare instance indeed. Good observation. So didomi, didos, didosin, didamin. That should be pretty straightforward for us. Didate, minte, and didasin. Didaasin rather. Didaasin. And the same with the rest of them. Tithemi, tithes, tithasin, tithemin, tithete, min, te, titheasin. Histemi, histes, histasin, histamin, histate, histasin. And the difference between histasin and histasin is the eta versus the alpha. And if it helps you at all, notice that the alpha is in the third plural for all of them. It's didaasin, asin, titheasin, and histasin. The alpha dominates. Okay. Your present middle passive.
Wait, sorry,
Yeah.
question. First and second person singular. So there is no neutral vowel morpheme in this, but the vowel in the verb stem has been lengthened?
Correct.
Okay.
There are no connecting vowels in your me stem or your me verbs. And you'll see that most apparently in present middle passive. Although you won't think that it's apparent because you'll think that it's a connecting vowel as opposed to a part of the stem. But remember, da, fe, and sta, those are your stems. So present middle passive, we have, remember our middle passive endings were my, psi, tai, metha, ista, ontai. We have them right here. Did I my, did I psi, did I tai, did I metha, did asta, did ontai. And we think that that omicron there is, as I just hinted at, the connecting vowel. It's not. It's part of your stem. Da. Tithemi, tithesai, tithetai, tithemita, tithista, tithentai. You can tell I'm having a very easy time pronouncing that. And then with histemi, we have histami, histasai, histatai, histamitha, histasta, histantai. Or imperfect, we have the augment, just like we had before. And I didn't tell you this, the reduplication is part of the present and the imperfect only in your stems. Present and imperfect. Got our epsilon for the augment, our reduplicated stem, which isn't telling us that it's a perfect, edidun, edidus, edidu, edidamen, edidata, edidasen. Where is the U coming from? Why don't we have da? Our endings for the imperfect were on, s, in, amen, et, on. We've got contraction. Omicron produces u. On omicron epsilon for on, s produces u. Omicron epsilon for in, on, s, in produces u. And the same thing happens with the rest of them. Contraction is taking place. So etithane, etithes, etithe, etithimin, etithete, etitasan. And even if you don't realize that that's what's taking place, we should still be able to do this. On, SN, Amineta, on, and they're all there. Endings haven't changed. They might get lengthened, but they haven't changed. And they're lengthening either because of your stem or because of contraction. Histane, histes, histay, histamen, histate, histasum. Your imperfect middle passive, our endings remain uta, metha istanta, or remain sata. We had that change. And the same thing happens here. Edidamen, edidasa, edidata, etc. Remember, those aren't connecting vowels, it's part of your stem.
Can you translate, like the, let's see.
Yeah, I can translate
Do
all.
is to give.
Mm-hmm.
So the present active, say singular, the do
Didomi,
is I give.
correct.
And then the next one is I gave myself, or I gave to myself.
I give to myself, or I myself give, or I was given, if it's passive. The previous examples were middle. I myself give, or I give to myself, those are middle. And then passive would be I am given. You were given, he, she was given. And then for our imperfect, I was giving.
Just have Joey call me when you get here. I was gonna shut your light off, sorry.
It's okay.
Okay, bye.
I was giving for the imperfect active. The imperfect middle, I was giving to myself, or giving for myself, or I myself was giving. And the passive would be I was being given.
So you are the gift in the passive?
Yes.
Okay.
You are the one, the subject is the one being acted upon in the passive. I was being given. And then our aorist, which is on the next page, would be I gave. And here's where knowing this again becomes very, very helpful. Because we don't have reduplication anymore. Instead, we have our stem. We've got the epsilon augment that's added. And in our aorist, this is important to note, in our aorist of the me verbs, we have a kappa alpha instead of a sigma alpha. Edoka, edokas, edokin, edokamen, edokata, edokan.
So there are no perfect me verbs?
I will say that if there are, and I don't think so, that they are so rare that they don't even merit mention. So you have your aorist actives. Augment, kappa alpha. Then you have your future, and he stopped giving you the full out conjugation here because he assumes you know. There you just have your stem, da or do, the sigma from the future, and your endings. Do so, do ses, do se, do somen, do samen, not do somen, do samen, do seta, do susen. But they so, they say, they say, they samen, they seta, they susen, etc. Your future middle, root plus sigma plus connecting vowel plus my tai or my itai meta istantai. And your future passive, we get, they are passive, right? Theta eta. So root, theta eta, sigma, connecting vowel, myatai. It's not important that you memorize all of this. It's just important to keep the endings that we've already memorized and the morphemes that we've already memorized to point them out. So if you saw, for instance, dathesami, we might get a little tripped up because we haven't accustomed ourselves to the root, da. But if we did get accustomed to that and say da, okay, that's the root. We got a theta eta, that immediately tells me that it's passive. We've got a sigma without an augment, which tells me that it's a future. We have a connecting vowel, and then we got our my psi tie ending. So there we go. Future, passive, indicative. Then we have our aorist passive. There we have the augment, root, theta eta, on SN endings. And we have the theta there because it's part of the stem. Theta. And you have your infinitives. Didonai, didastai, dunai, dathenai.
Is there also very few, if any, subjunctive univerbs?
I would not say that. I would not say that at all. So give me a second. Consult this right here. Me conjugation. Yeah. He doesn't cover it in the lesson. I guess he figures that you'll go and you'll learn it in your own time. I think that that really should be in here. But I have never written my own textbook. So in this little sheet you've got back here, you've got it. You've got the present subjunctive, the active voice, present imperfect, aorist, etc. And I don't see any reference here to a perfect, so there must not be any.
So how would you translate the present active infinitive?
Present active infinitive
Yeah.
to give. I translate my aorist active infinitive to give as well.
This is a little random, but you can't turn a verb into an adverb, correct? I'm looking at the dose on the present active indicative second singular. And dose is normally the adverb.
It normally is, but in this case it's not. Yeah. I don't think you can turn a verb into an adverb. You typically turn nouns into adverbs, and sometimes you turn nouns into verbs. Can't think of any instance where you turn a verb into an adverb. But I don't have comprehensive knowledge. So, yeah, that's something you'd have to look out for. And you have to look out for that in other instances of the verb as well, where lengthening takes place and you have a sigma as an ending. Good catch. Didose, present active indicative. Very good observation. But that's simply you give. Any other questions? Okay. After you get that down, you know Greek grammar. With the exception of, the subjunctive and the imperative that he's not listing here for the me verbs. Context a lot of the times will tell you if it's a subjunctive and it'll help you out. You still have those key morphological features like sigmas and whatnot to help you out there. And you'll also have hennas in the context or may that's used with your subjunctive. And those will help you to know that that me verb is outside of the indicative mood. And you'll also have your aids like the analytical Greek lexicon, so it'll parse it for you, that'll help until you get that by translating a lot. So if you'll turn to 1 John, we'll do it verse or two. I think we've got about 15 minutes left. Homework for the week is to learn your vocabulary, and you actually do have some this week. They are your me verbs, and they are more than just those three. So learn those, and then do your translation from verse 7 through 14. 1 John 2.